What if Easter isn't just inspiring, but historical? For many people, the resurrection of Jesus is either a beautiful metaphor about hope or a blind leap of faith. But Christianity doesn't present it that way. The Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15:14, "If Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith." That's not symbolic language. That's a testable claim. Christianity rises or falls on one event. So the real question isn't whether the resurrection is meaningful. The real question is, did it happen? Let me give you 6 reasons to take it seriously. First, the empty tomb. Jesus was publicly executed in Jerusalem. He was buried, and 3 days later, his tomb was empty. This wasn't claimed generations later in a distant land. It was proclaimed immediately in the same city where he was crucified. If his body were still there, the authorities could have ended the movement instantly by producing it. Instead, the earliest explanation wasn't "the tomb isn't empty," it was "the disciples stole the body." That response actually admits something important. The tomb was empty. The debate from the beginning was never about whether it was empty, it was about how it became empty. Second, women were the first witnesses. All 4 Gospels report that women discovered the empty tomb. That may not stand out to us today, but in the first-century Jewish world, a woman's testimony was not considered legally strong in court. If you were inventing a resurrection story to convince people, you would not make women your primary witnesses. You would name Peter first, or John. But the gospel writers don't edit the story to make it more persuasive. They report what happened. That detail carries the ring of authenticity. You don't invent culturally awkward features in a fabricated legend. Third, the early creed in 1 Corinthians 15. This one is critical. In 1 Corinthians 15:3-8, Paul writes, "For what I received I passed on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the 3rd day according to the Scriptures, and that he appeared." Then he lists witnesses: Peter, the 12, more than 500 people at one time, James, and finally, himself. Notice Paul says, "What I received, I passed on." Most scholars, including many who are not Christians, agree this passage is an early Christian creed, a formal statement of belief that predates Paul's letter. Paul wrote 1 Corinthians around AD 55, but this creed is dated to within just a few years of Jesus' death, possibly as early as AD 30 to 35. That means the resurrection was not a legend that developed over centuries. It was the core message from the very beginning. Fourth, the conversion of James and Paul. Let's start with James, the brother of Jesus. During Jesus' ministry, the Gospels tell us his brothers did not believe in him. Think about that. It's hard enough convincing strangers you are the Son of God. Imagine convincing your siblings. And yet, after the resurrection, James becomes a leader in the Jerusalem church. He is described as a pillar. Eventually, he is martyred for his faith. What changed? Paul tells us the risen Jesus appeared specifically to James. What would it take for you to worship your older brother as Lord? Something extraordinary. Now consider Paul. Paul wasn't spiritually searching. He was persecuting Christians. He arrested them, approved violence against them. Then he claims to encounter the risen Jesus on the road to Damascus. From that moment on, everything changes. He goes from persecutor to missionary, from prestige to prison, from comfort to suffering. People may die for something false if they believe it's true, but they will not willingly suffer for something they know is false. What explains that kind of reversal? Fifth, the transformation of the disciples. Before the resurrection, the disciples were hiding. Peter denied Jesus. They scattered when he was arrested. After claiming to see the risen Christ, they boldly preached in Jerusalem, the very place he had been executed. They endured persecution, imprisonment, and, in many cases, death. If they had fabricated the resurrection, they would have known it. And under pressure, someone would have cracked. Instead, they held their testimony. Something happened. Sixth, the explosion of the early church. The Christian movement didn't slowly evolve centuries later. It exploded immediately. In Jerusalem, proclaiming bodily resurrection under persecution. And something else remarkable happened. Jewish believers who had worshipped on Saturday for centuries began gathering on Sunday. Why? Because Sunday was the day Jesus rose. That kind of seismic shift doesn't happen because of vague spiritual inspiration. It happens because people were convinced something historical occurred. So, at some point, we have to ask, what explanation best accounts for all of this? An empty tomb? Women witnesses? An early creed? Skeptics converted? Cowards transformed? A movement launched at ground zero? The resurrection explains it. But now, it becomes personal. If the resurrection didn't happen, Christianity is just a comforting idea. But if it did, then Jesus is not just someone to admire, he is alive. The resurrection means sin is not the end of your story. Death is not the final word over your life. Your failures do not define you. Your shame does not own you. It means the cross actually worked. It means forgiveness is real. It means when Jesus said, "It is finished," he meant it. And it means the one who walked out of the tomb is not distant from you right now. He is not asking you to be perfect. He is not asking you to have every doubt resolved. He is not asking you to clean yourself up first. He is inviting you. If he rose, then he reigns. And if he reigns, then he is worthy of your trust. Not just your intellectual agreement, but your life. So maybe the question isn't only, did it happen? Maybe the deeper question is this: if it did, will you trust him? Will you bring him your doubts, your fears, your regrets, your future? Because the resurrection is not just proof, it's promise. A promise that death does not win. A promise that grace is stronger than your past. A promise that new life is possible, even now. So don't ignore it. Lean in. Ask him. And if you find yourself believing, even a little, follow him. Because if Jesus walked out of that grave, then hope has a name.